We have a major update on WWE signing the Elite, but first, more backstage problems in AEW have seemingly been revealed. Following the match between Britt Baker and Taya Valkyrie on this past Wednesday's episode of AEW Dynamite, a sign would be shown on air that read "Book the women's division better," something that went viral on social media. This would then spark online debate as to the treatment of the AEW women's division, with an independent wrestler giving their thoughts on the matter. Indie veteran Lou Fisto would take to Twitter to share her experience at an AEW taping last year, with a Wrestling 1 match on AEW Dark Elevation in April 2022. Lou would call out unnamed talent in the locker room for having too much power, something she says is causing the issues on screen, and she would say, "It's cute how people blame booking for a bad women's division. Talent with too much power, talent denigrating each other, talent trash-talking potential employees so they never get in as soon as they walk in. It starts here. Signed, the one you called effing French Canadian asshole." There's been no official response from anybody within All Elite Wrestling at this time, although we'll await any follow-ups to the claims. And just quickly before we continue, be sure to check out my latest video, 10 Facts MJF Doesn't Want You to Know, something I've been working on for many months at this point. In the video, we pose the question of who is the real Maxwell Jacob Friedman, and is the persona we see the real him? I guarantee you'll learn a whole bunch of things about the man that claims to be better than you. Just don't tell him I told you so. And next, a popular AEW star is set to miss All in London. Speaking of the AEW women's roster, one of the most popular stars in the company right now is former AEW Women's World Champion Jamie Hayter, whose organic rise led to her glory in November 2022. With that said, she was since forced to drop the women's title due to suffering from an injury that has seen her out of action since May 2023. Whilst there was hope amongst the fan base that Hayter would be back in time for All in London in her home country of England, the latest edition of the Wrestling Observer newsletter has put an end to such hopes, as it was revealed that she is not expected back in time for the late August show. And Dave Meltzer would write, "We don't have much on Jamie Hayter, but there's been at least talk she won't make it back for Wembley, which obviously would be the goal if possible." Hayter hasn't been seen on AEW television since her loss to Toni Storm at the AEW Double or Nothing pay-per-view in May 2023, where they're said to have been working hurt leading up to the show, which ultimately led to her dropping the AEW women's title. The feeling at the time was that the loss could set up a redemption arc at All in London against Toni, although it looks like this won't be happening. It remains to be seen how long Jamie will be off screens for, although the news comes as a blow to anyone hoping that she would wrestle under the Wembley Arch in just over 5 weeks' time. Next up, a former WWE champion is heading to Impact Wrestling. Tonight and tomorrow night, Impact Wrestling take over the Cicero Stadium in Chicago, with them set to hold their latest television tapings in the second city. Last night, the promotion would make several match announcements, including 2 that involves a big debut for the company. At the tapings, Samurai Del Sol, aka former WWE Cruiserweight champion Kalisto, is set to team with Black Taurus and Laredo Kid to take on Bully Ray, Moose, and Brian Myers in 6-man tag action, this before he battles X-Division champion Chris Sabin on night 2. Since his WWE release in April 2021, Del Sol has worked matches in multiple top promotions including AEW and Lucha Libre AAA, with him set to add another to the list. There's currently no word on if this will be a one-off appearance due to Impact running his hometown of Chicago, or if this is something more long-term, although he will no doubt be a solid addition to the company's X-Division. But do you think Impact should sign the former Kalisto to a full-time deal? Let me know in the comments down below. And next up, a former AEW champion is edging closer to a return. Former AEW Women's World Champion Thunder Rosa has been absent from All Elite Wrestling television since August 2022, with a back injury forcing her to eventually vacate the title a few months later. In a recent interview on Busted Open Radio, AEW's in-house doctor, Doc Samson, would give an update on Rosa's health and a potential time frame for her eventual return, and he would say, "Looking at the most recent MRIs and all the conservative stuff we've done in the past, you're progressing well right now. You do still have all the pathology in your lower back, L4, L5. I think that with our progression, pushing it to the limit but taking it sequentially, so going week to week to week, we push a little more. If we hit a roadblock, we back it up a step, but I think over the next 4 to 6 weeks, we'll see how it's going." As a side note, it was reported in the latest Wrestling Observer newsletter that Rosa is currently training for her return in San Antonio with former WWE star Funaki. With that said, her return looks to be multiple weeks away at a minimum. Next up, WWE are bringing back a classic pay-per-view. In 1999, WWF would host the first No Mercy event from Manchester, England, before it went on to become a yearly fixture of the company's schedule until 2008, before it twice returned in 2016 and 2017. The name would also become legendary through the WWF No Mercy video game on N64, which is often dubbed as the best wrestling game of all time. WWE would yesterday announce that the No Mercy event will return once again, this time part of the NXT brand. NXT No Mercy is set to take place live from the Mechanics Bank Arena in Bakersfield, California on Saturday, September 30th, with stars such as NXT champion Carmelo Hayes, NXT Women's champion Tiffany Stratton, Roxanne Perez, Wes Lee, Bron Breakker, and many more all announced to be taking part. Before then, NXT is set for their next premium live event this Sunday night when they host the Great American Bash, which is another classic name that the brand revived, with it formerly being a staple of WCW before the WWE buyout. And next, could this main roster faction be set for a new member? Reigning WWE Intercontinental Champion Gunther is the leader of the Imperium faction, with him flanked by both Ludwig Kaiser and Giovanni Vinci. The origins of the group actually stem back to Kaiser and Gunther's time prior to WWE, with them running rampant over Europe under the name of Ringkampf, with them then going by the name of Walter and Axel Dieter Jr. alongside Timothy Thatcher, Viet Muller, and Christian Michael Jacoby. One of Ringkampf's most notorious rivals was Ilya Dragunov, who now competes in NXT, somebody who would appear in an interview with WrestleSphere this week where he would be asked about potentially joining his former rivals. Dragunov wasn't so keen on the idea, with him feeling that it's not a good fit, and he would say, "My question to this is, honestly, who would actually want this? There couldn't be more differences between Imperium and me. Those guys are very cold, very stoic, very methodical. I'm a completely unbalanced, super intense mad dragon. That's the person I am. They don't fit together. Who wants to see something that is not fitting together?" It was recently reported by WRKD Wrestling that there had been internal talks over Ilya joining Imperium, although it seems the man himself isn't a fan of the idea. Next up, this ECW legend is pushing for an AEW debut. This past Wednesday on AEW Dynamite, new FTW champion Jack Perry would find himself face to face with former ECW World Heavyweight Champion Jerry Lynn, with the two now set to meet face to face next week, many fans anticipating a potential surprise appearance from an ECW legend, with Rob Van Dam one of the names on the lips of fans. Speaking on Busted Open Radio this week, fellow ECW alumni Bully Ray would speak on the possibility of potential expansion of the Jack Perry versus ECW angle, feeling that he himself could bring over 1 million viewers to the show were he to appear, and Bully would say, "If the story went down the ECW road and I showed up in the right town, there's monster business to be done there. This is not me blowing smoke up my own ass. If you announced that Bully Ray, or even Tommy Dreamer to that matter, were showing up on AEW Dynamite on whatever week it was to come face to face and confront Jack Perry, you're doing over 1 million viewers, guaranteed. Tommy fits the part the best. Him and Taz were the bestest of friends. Tommy was Taz's best man at his wedding. The story is so deep, it's there if you want to go down the ECW road. If you do go down that ECW road, you will make Jack Perry a bigger star at the end of the story than you can with any other talent that's in AEW right now." The FTW Championship was of course founded in Extreme Championship Wrestling in 1998, with then champion Taz claiming to be the champion of ECW. But do you think AEW should run the ECW angle for the FTW title going forward, and who would you like to see show up to face Jack Perry? Let me know in the comments down below. And next up, the latest AEW signing has been confirmed. Following this past Wednesday's episode of AEW Dynamite, we have some news on some backstage additions to the company, with two popular names working the show as a producer. According to reports from PW Insider's Mike Johnson, former WWE Tag Team Champion Scotty 2 Hottie, real name Scott Garland, was backstage at the show, as well as independent wrestling legend Chris Hero, with them both producing matches. Fightful Select would then add that Garland was brought in this week week to work the AEW tapings as their producer/coach, this following his WWE release in November 2021, where he worked as a trainer in NXT, with this said to be on a trial basis. As for Hero, he is said to have signed for the company full-time, this following a recent tryout in June. Tony Khan would recently joke on Twitter that he's been chipping away at Chris for a return to in-ring action, so perhaps we'll see him take on an on-screen role in the future, either in Ring of Honor or All Elite Wrestling. But what do you make of the newest addition and potential addition to the AEW Backstage team? Let me know in the comments down below. Next up, we have a major update on WWE signing the Elite. One of the most talked about topics in All Elite Wrestling right now is the impending status of Kenny Omega, the Young Bucks, and Hangman Page, whose contracts are coming to an end in the next several months, with there being no word on an agreement for them to stay. As well as this, Fightful Select would recently report that WWE would have interest in signing all 4 men were the opportunity to present itself, something we now have a breakthrough on via today's Wrestling Observer newsletter. According to Dave Meltzer, the belief is that the Elite will now in fact be staying with AEW, and he would write, "The prevailing belief is that the Young Bucks, Kenny Omega and Adam Page are staying. The interview Omega did off the air in Boston would have led you to believe that is the case. The interview was also originally supposed to be on television, as was the handshake between the Golden Elite and BCC, which seemed to signal the end of the feud at this point. If that Omega thing was on television with the mention of them sticking together, that's where so many people believed they were staying, and there was a no deal. None of those involved have said if that is what that line meant." Dave would then add some context as to the feeling within WWE, and it appears that their hopes of signing Kenny Omega specifically have now dwindled, and he would add, "We do know from a WWE standpoint that months ago they had the impression they had a good shot at Omega in 2024, and he was the most coveted of all the guys being talked about like Jay White and the others. That has gone cold, so they do believe he's staying with AEW." Whilst we still await news and confirmation that the Elite have signed new contracts, the suggestion that all 4 men will be sticking together and that WWE have lost hope in signing Kenny Omega appears to suggest that they will continue to be All Elite for years to come. But do you think the Elite will stick around in AEW? Let me know in the comments down below. And before you go, make sure you check out 10 facts that MJF doesn't want you to know.